the computer. That's the easiest way. So it is time, and I would like to, I'm Steve Stone from Gardner-Webb University. I don't know if I've met you before. You both look very familiar to me. So I want to welcome you to, and thank you very much for being a part of Angela's proposal and her dissertation committee. What we do at Gardner-Webb is not possible without the help of those of you in the field, those of you who kind of step up and be a part of this wonderful candidate's experience and career and journey. So from Gardner-Webb University, thank you very much for doing this, for giving up your time and for being a part of something special for Angela. I know Angela's most appreciative of it as well. I'll let her say that, but I just wanted you to know that Gardner-Webb is able to do this because of wonderful people like you. So thank you very much. And that's it. I want to tell you that I have worked with Angela now. I have known Angela probably for 2.5 years, or ever since she's been in the program. I was fortunate enough to have a chance to meet her in Fayetteville when we went down to the Fayetteville campus, or to the Fayetteville site. And I can tell you, I'm very impressed with what she did and what she continues to do. So I think you will be as well. She's an excellent person. She's got great personality. She's a very studious and she writes well. So I look forward to hearing her presentation and then along this journey being a part of it with her. So Angela, I will turn it over to you and you can start sharing, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. I am so honored to be a part of your first Fayetteville cohort that you encounter. I am honored to be able to present my topic on today and propose with such great educators who have influenced me along the way. I just want to take this time to say thank you, Dr. Batts. Thank you, Dr. Hobbs, for your feedback, your words of encouragement, and just taking out time to push me to be successful in all that I do. So I thank you for agreeing to be a part of my committee. And words just truly cannot express my gratitude. Dr. Stone, I appreciate your willingness to be my chair. When I had to select the chair without hesitation, I knew you were the one for the job because I needed someone to push me and keep me on track. I love a challenge and you always challenge me. So thank you, Dr. Stone, for all that you do and all that you have done. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I would ask my committee members that if you do have questions regarding my presentation, the research, or anything, please stop me throughout the process. You do not have to wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions. I invite you to ask questions as we go along with this presentation. Thank you so much. So let's begin. My topic for my study is a mixed method study on the effect restorative practices have on student discipline and grades 3 through 5. The problem that led to me conducting this research is that the suspension rates in the state of North Carolina are increasing. So we have an increased rate of suspension rates in North Carolina. I just want to talk about the vision for the North Carolina Public Schools for a second, which is to ensure that every public school student in North Carolina will be empowered to accept academic challenges, prepare to pursue their chosen paths after graduating high school, and encouraged to become lifelong learners with the capacity to engage in globally competitive society. And I just want to leave a pin in that right there where it says, accept academic challenges. Oftentimes we think of academic challenges as, being things such as, student achievement with grades and things as such, but their academic success totally depends on a holistic approach that includes social and emotional learning. So I just wanted to point that out. I want to begin with some statistics that some background information about my problem. In the year 2018, 2019, the state of North Carolina reported over 200,000 short-term suspensions in the North Carolina public and charter school sectors. Which also may have led to the over 10,000 dropouts that were reported with the state of North Carolina during that same year. So we had over 200,000 short-term suspensions that were reported, along with 10,000 students who opted to drop out of school that same school year. Research shows that not only does suspension have a negative effect on achievement and dropout, but it also has been disproportionately applied to specific groups. So I would also like to point out to you all some statistics with the suspension rates in the state of North Carolina as they reflect over the past 5 years that led up to 2018-2019 school year. As we look at this data, we can see that there is a gap as it relates to male versus female suspension rates in the state of North Carolina over those past 5 years in which the data was provided. We can see from the data that the male suspension rate is almost 2.6 times greater than that of a female student. And a lot of research has been conducted to support that. A lot of the suspension rates had increased when President Bill Clinton enacted the zero tolerance policy, which gauged towards, bringing drugs, alcohol, guns and things as such into the school building. And once that zero tolerance policy became active, you saw a rise in short-term OSS and ISS in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. Not only does research show that there's a gap with suspension rates with male students, as you can see provided here from the North Carolina data, but there's also research to show, there's also statistics to support that students in certain demographics and ethnicities also have a graphical gap when it comes to suspension rates. So I just wanted to point this out as well. From the same source that I reported, the male versus female, it was also broken down into ethnicities. And as we can see from this data that is provided, that American Indian, Black, and multiracial students have a significant higher rate of suspension than those of their white peers. And also just looking at the rate of the Black compared to the white peers and the American Indian, just those two alone is significantly higher than those of the students of their white peers. So what I want to do, the purpose of this study is to investigate the use of restorative practices in the 3-5 setting, grades 3, 4, and 5 setting, and what impact it has on student discipline. And I just want to, for a minute, talk about, when I was in the classroom, just share some personal experiences with you. When I was in the classroom, I noticed that the suspension rate, oftentimes when I, walked by the ISS room, it was overflowing with students, just overflowing with students. A lot of times those students were repeat offenders. And then when I became an administrator, one of the least loves that I did not like having to suspend a student, but it was a part of the process. So I wanted to know, how can we lower the suspension rate, and how can we really help our students who are repeat offenders? So that's why I wanted to investigate the use of restorative practices in the elementary school setting, grades 3 through 5, and how that would impact student discipline, because we want to make a difference in what we do daily. The overarching research question is what impact do restorative practices have on classroom management? What are the teacher perceptions? What impact does it have on student discipline? And what impact does it have on student-teacher relationships? The theoretical framework for my study is social and emotional learning. Throughout the process, students must be aware of themselves. And they must be aware of their emotions. They must be able to apply, knowledge and skills necessary to manage those emotions. And we must work with our students to set goals that are achievable to help them move forward, and helping them have empathy towards themselves, empathy towards others, and teaching our students how to maintain positive relationships and how to make responsible decisions. Weinsberg said that there's 3 essential factors to ensuring that students are successful daily. In order to ensure that students are successful daily, students must know themselves and can manage themselves. And students must be able to know how to take the perspectives of others and relate them to themselves effectively. And students must also be able to make sound choices about personal and social decisions. CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, has done a lot of research around social and emotional learning, and they have developed their own framework as to what is necessary to support a child holistically to ensure success. CASEL was established in 1994, which is around the zero tolerance policy establishment time. And so when we started knowing that a lot of students were having problems, handling themselves, CASEL began to jump on the bandwagon and say, what can we do to support our students? What can we do to help make sure our students are successful? So that's where they developed this framework that support our students, not only in the classroom, but how do you support them throughout the entire school building? And let's not just stop there. How can we support our students in their homes and in the communities? We want to teach them skills that's not going to only set them up for success just in their classes, but throughout the school and everywhere that they go. So holistic support for their students. CASEL has developed 5 competencies that they feel are essential to ensuring students are successful in what they do. The first component will be self-awareness. And this is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how these influence behaviors. For an example, identifying emotions, accurate self-perception, recognizing strength, self-control, and self-efficacy. The second component is social awareness, which is the ability to take the perspective of others and empathize with others, including those from diverse background and cultures. So for an example, perspective taking, empathy, appreciating diversity, and respecting others, no matter what culture, what background in which they're from. The third component is responsible decision making. And this is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on the ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. For an example, identifying problems, analyzing situations, solving problems, evaluating, reflecting, and ethical responsibility. The fourth component is self-management. And this is the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. So for an example, this is impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, social self-motivation, goal setting, even organizational skills for students. And finally, the final component is relationship skills. This is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. So this involves communication, social engagement, relationship building, and teamwork. And collectively, these 5 components address the holistic needs of the students in all environments to ensure that they are and successful in what they do. And as I think about the North Carolina, again, the vision is to make sure they are set up for global, in a global competitive society. They must have these 5 components to ensure that they are successful and able to compete in this globally competitive society that we now live in. There's an abundance of research that is that you can find as it relates to social and emotional learning for school-age children. However, there's a gap in research as it relates to restorative practices and how they affect students in rural districts. A lot of research that I found dealt with urban districts and large school districts, such as school districts in like Chicago or these, urban zones. However, there's little research on the impact it has on rural districts, such as the one that that I've chose for the research here. A lot of research supports that social emotional learning programs, it's two-folded. It's a prevention program as well as a promotion program to prevent behaviors, of course, that are happening, problems that are happening in the school setting, while promoting social and emotional competency rather than just direct intervention. What we want students to get to the point is that they become self-aware and they start taking responsibility for their own actions without the educator, the teacher, or the leader having to remind them of what steps that they should take, what appropriate steps they should take to be successful. So we're preventing the behaviors while promoting students to learn the right thing to do to handle these diverse situations. Social emotional learning programming is intended to enhance all students. So this is not just something geared towards, a certain group of students, though that demographic gap that I mentioned earlier, but this is for all students, not just for a group of students, to help them develop healthy behaviors and to prevent their engaging in maladaptive and unhealthy behaviors. So this is for all students. I don't think in the 12 years that I've been in education that I found the perfect student. I think every student had their own issues. So social emotional learning is for all students, not just the students who have behavior issues, but it could be for that AIG student who struggle with self-confidence. So social emotional learning is a holistic approach for every child, all children. The key thing in order to be successful with social and emotional learning is that whatever strategies, whatever interventions that the classroom teacher is using or that the school is using, is that they must be consistent in what they're doing and use. And whatever programs that the school system or the school decide to adopt, we have to make sure that those school districts or the school district needs to make sure that they are implementing those programs with fidelity and as the developer intended it for it to be implemented. So for an example, if the developer says that this practice should be implemented 3 times a day, 15 minutes, 3 times a week for 15 minutes a day for each of those 3 days, then we can't take a shortcut and say, well, I'm going to do it 2 times this week for 5 minutes, and I'm going to do it 3 times next week for 40 minutes. We have to be consistent in what we do and make sure we're, implementing the program or intervention strategy as the developer, suggested for it to be implemented in order to ensure fidelity of the process, which is the key to success when working with students and ensuring that the program is successful. Restorative practices, just to kind of give you some insight, it was developed, it was really referred to as restorative justice, but the school system, when we adopt
All right, Angela, can anyone hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Betts, Dr. Hobbs? Okay, so Angela.
I can, but Angela, we lost you.
Yeah, you froze a little bit on us, Angela. So you might want to go just back about 30 seconds. We didn't lose much.
Okay. You hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I apologize. Thank you, Dr. Stone, for stopping me. But what just to wrap up that slide, I was just saying, in order to ensure success for our students socially and emotionally, whatever programs we adopt, we want to make sure that we implement that program with fidelity if we truly want our students to be successful. Restorative practices, which was a product of what was called restorative justices, which started in our prison systems, trying to get, our inmates on the right track. Our school systems adopted some of the same concepts in which we call restorative practices to try to combat the punitive behavior, the punitive discipline that was happening, the harsh discipline such as expulsion, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. And there's 5 practices that goes along with restorative justice, which focuses on the harm and the need, addressing the obligations, using impulsive and collaborative processes, involving stakeholders, and seeking right for wrong. So, you know, there's a process in which we must take in order to ensure our students are successful as it relates to restorative practices. Restorative discipline is a part of the is a component that's a part of the repeat offender syndrome that I spoke about earlier. Oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, when I would walk by an ISS classroom, I will often see the same group of students in there constantly being sent out of their classroom or being disciplined. So Cummings in 2018 discussed what's called restorative discipline, which is used to support those group of students who are repeat offenders. And when I say repeat offenders, again, I mean those students who, you know, got suspended last week, now they're suspended again, now they're suspended again. And we know as educators that oftentimes our suspension rates look really high because we have the same students who are, you know, are being reprimanded for, you know, different incidents. It's not because the whole school is, you know, misbehaving, but we have those students who constantly stay in trouble. So restorative discipline is a component in which students, we're teaching them how to restore the harm and how to take responsibility for their action and address what caused the behavior. And it is imperative that schools incorporate this in their daily lessons and teach the students how to deal with situations appropriately. How do you restore the harm when you hurt someone, when you say something that is hurtful? How do we repair that so that we can move forward and establish healthy relationships? In 2015, around 2015, I noticed, so like over the past 10 years, the last decade of education, PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention and Support, has become one of the popular frameworks that have been used in several school districts. It's a framework that is a tiered approach that provides behavior support to students in both educational and in social outcomes. So we have a tiered approach. You have a group of students who may need different, you know, methods and supports to ensure that they are successful in what they do. For an example, just sending them to the school counselor may not be everything they need. They may need tier 3 support, which means we may need to get help from a therapist, a school psychologist, a behavior coach, or something more than what the typical average student may need. So PBIS model provides intervention for students, which provides support for student behavior, staff behavior, and systematic decision making. And a branch of the PBIS that has now become more popular is the umbrella of that PBIS falls under will be MTSS, which is the multi-tier system of support, which was launched to not only address students who were struggling with behaviors, but also students who were struggling academically. As mentioned earlier, I just want to provide the research to support that there are patterns that have been found for suspensions for minority students compared to their white peers. And this disproportional suspension rates of minority, they result in punitive reprimands. Research has shown that, you know, the minority students may get more punitive consequences than those of their white peers. And surprisingly, as I was conducting my research, I found that 95% of out-of-school suspensions are for non-violent infractions such as tardiness, absence, absentees, or things that weren't even violent, but our students are being reprimanded and having to be called to sit home because of things that are not violent. And it's a problem because, as I mentioned, suspension rates leads to an increase in anxiety, which causes them to withdraw from social engagement, which could lead to them dropping out. So that's why this again is the problem, and that's why this research is imperative. Positive teacher-student relationship among all racial groups are the key to creating a supportive and equitable school climate that does not rely on punitive approaches to behavior. So encouraging our students to build those positive relationships with our students is vital for the success of our students holistically, not just academically, but social and emotionally as well. Which leads to my 3 research questions. Research question 1, what measurable impact do restorative practices have on student discipline as measured by in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension rates? Question 2, what specific demographic of students have a disproportional discipline gap than others? If identified, what impact does restorative practices have on these groups as measured by ISS and OSS rates? And my 3rd question is, how do teachers perceive restorative practices as a management system? So now I want to talk about my methodology a little bit. And please, as I said earlier, feel free to chime in and ask questions as I go along. If you have any questions about my methodology, I am doing a mixed method study because research has really supported that a mixed method study will truly help you gain insight and a stronger understanding of what the problem or the question is itself. So I really want to study this and have a full understanding of the problem and how we can address the problem. So let me just talk about mixed method that involves both quantitative and qualitative methods. My quantitative method will I will be pulling student discipline data from the 2018-2019 school year and comparing that to the student discipline data of the 2019-2020 school year. I just want to add, I did not choose to do my research for this school year due to the pandemic. So I wanted to try my best to get a full picture of the impact restorative practices had when we had a somewhat full school year. My qualitative research will be providing a teacher survey so that I can gain the perspective of restorative practices as a management system from our teachers. I really want to get the stories and hear from our teachers to better understand their perspective. My participants, so I just want to talk about the school district that I chose is in the southeastern part of North Carolina. It's in a rural area. It's a small school district that has 5 schools, 3 elementary schools, a middle school, a traditional middle school, and a traditional high school. And the school that I chose is one of the elementary schools that houses grades 3, 4, and 5. And that school has approximately 714 students. And through this process, the name and the personal information of my students will not be included in this. As well as I will provide teacher surveys. So this school has approximately 45 teachers, and I will be sending the survey out to all 45 of the teachers, and I will ensure that their reports are going to remain anonymous to protect their identity of the participants so that they can be free to express themselves because I truly want to get an understanding of their perspectives. The instruments that I will be using to collect the data, my discipline data, I will be using the North Carolina school program that all the public schools use, which is PowerSchool. And I will use that to collect the incident reports. Again, no students' names, no student personal information, but I just want to get an incident report that include that I'll be able to break down the information by demographics, such as ethnicity, male versus female, grade levels. So I'm going to use PowerSchool to pull the incident reports for those 2018-19 and 19-20 school years. And then I'm going to use a program called SPSS to really give me the descriptive statistics so I can get a better understanding of what's happening with the discipline data and compare the discipline data over those 2 years. SurveyMonkey will be used to give the teachers, to conduct the surveys for the teachers. And my survey will be using a continuous scale, strongly agree, strongly disagree kind of rating. The first few questions of my survey will include kind of some information about the teacher to get a better understanding of their experiences with restorative practices. But most of my questions are a continuous rating scale that I'm going to be using to get the perspective of the teachers. Reporting and analysis, quantitative analysis, which is again the PowerSchool data that I'm going to be pulling for the students, discipline, office discipline referral, the OSS, ISS rates for those students. I will be reporting that out using descriptive statistics, as well as a summary, in a summary of the findings. So I'll be using charts, I'll be using data that is provided through the SPSS program to report my findings. Qualitative analysis and reporting, I will be using the report that is generated through SurveyMonkey, the different charts, graphs, and information that is populated once the teachers anonymously complete their survey to report my findings. So my findings will be a narrative. I'm not going to use the charts and data, but it's to be quantitative, but I'm going to use a narrative to kind of give a description of what I found from the data that I analyzed from the survey. There are a few limitations for my study. There is a rise in beginner teacher rates. And so those teachers may not have received the MTSS, social emotional learning, restorative practices, PBIS training from the district because of, the rise in the turnover rates in this field right now, as well as COVID-19 is a limitation because the 2019-2000 school year ended in March. So I am using that year for my research, but there may be a few months of data from March until May that may impact the data a little bit, but we'll see. And the possible number of teachers who may respond, I'm sending the survey to 45 teachers. I'm hoping to at least get half of the teachers to respond to the survey. So those are a couple of limitations, just a possible number of teachers who may actually respond. Delimitations, the selected school district has done a phenomenal job training staff on the school level and district level with MTSS and PBIS, as well as providing ACES training and equity training for the teachers to address social emotional learning. And the selected school district also have, the school has a well-established restorative practices plan that they use to improve student behaviors. And a delimitation is I work for the selected school district, which makes it convenient for me to conduct my research in that district. So I used to work there. I do have a survey protocol and instrument, but just to talk about my survey a little bit, as I mentioned, there's 20 questions to my survey. I'm hoping the survey shouldn't take no more than 15 minutes max for the teachers to complete. I plan to give them at least a week to send out the survey, respond to the survey, and I will make sure that my survey protocol is in line and they have a clear understanding of the process and procedure. And at this time, I'm taking questions. Did I leave? Am I still here?
Yeah, you're there. You talk very fast.
Well, I'm
But you
sorry.
cover the material well. So we'll open it up for any kind of questions that may be from the committee members.
Well, I just want to ask, first of all, Angela, you did a fantastic job. Very knowledgeable, very articulate. You did a great job covering your information. I just have one question. Do you have to get the individuals that you're going to survey? Are you going to get them to sign some type of informed consent, to do the survey? Have you thought about that?
Thank you, Dr. Hobbs, for that question, and your encouraging words. I did, so what I have done, and if I do need to do that, I don't mind, but what I have done, I have gotten permission from the superintendent and the Board of Education to conduct my survey and my research in their district, as well as I have obtained permission from the school principal to send out the survey. I did not have a permission slip for them to sign, if that's something that maybe I can do as far as maybe a beginning on the protocol when I send out the survey, that maybe they can, agree to, just click a button. I don't mind doing that at all. I really didn't think about if the individual teacher will give me permission, but I guess that's something I need to do.
Angela and Dr. Hobbs, the university is going to require that when she goes through the IRB process. What she will do is she will do an electronic survey. And on that electronic survey, when the teachers complete it, there's a little block where it just says, I understand that I'm giving consent by filling out this survey. So consent is required, but it will be done through, Angela will have to do this in the next step to develop this consent, and that's the IRB process. But yeah, it'll be there, and because she's doing it electronically, it will be, if I'm teacher 1 and you're teacher 2, when we pull up this survey at the very top, it will be filling out this survey, you understand you're giving me consent. So we will have consent. And Angela, I'm sorry, I didn't cover that with you already, but we'll talk about that when we talk about the IRB process.
No worries. I'm still learning, and that's okay.
Angela, you did a phenomenal job. I love all of your background information and your graphs with the background of the problem, with your data sets and everything. Absolutely wonderful job. And as always, you articulated yourself very well and are very knowledgeable of the topic. My question is about the data that you're going to be pulling. So you're pulling it for the 18-19 and the 19-20 school years, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in 1920, since we shut down in March, I would just want to make sure that, I don't know if you're planning on pulling the data through March of each school year, so that you're looking at comparative amounts of time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I definitely will, can take that in consideration, and that is a very good suggestion, Dr. Batts. Thank you for that.
18-19 data is going to be for a full year, but we all went home in March of 2020. So just something to think about. And then my only other question is related to the surveying of the teachers who are in the school now. Will it matter in terms of your methodology that some of the teachers that are at the school now weren't there during the 18-19 and 19-20 school years, or does that?
It should not. I don't think that part will matter, because they are still today implementing those restorative practices. So even though the data, and I should have addressed this, and I did not in my presentation. So the perceptions of restorative practices actually only addresses question number 3, which is not really in relation to the 2018, 2019, 1920s discipline data. It's not in relation to that, but it's just getting their perspectives on just restorative practice as they see them today. I don't know if
so your lack of experience would not be a hindrance to completing the survey.
No. And in my survey, I do ask like the number of years they've been employed, in their current position, because when I do, my results in chapter 4, I do want to address the teachers who may not have had this, comparable number of experience that other teachers may have had with restorative practices in student behaviors. Did that answer your question, Dr. Batts?
It did. Thank you for that clarification.
And I'd say thank you for your kind words too, Dr. Batts.
All right. I'll give you kind words too, Angela. You did a great job. So committee members, are there any other things that we want to say in public session before we go to a breakout session to talk about the proposal? And then we'll join back with Angela. Are there anything before we go to our breakout? All right, Angela, I'm going to try to do the breakout sessions, which means I'm going to take the 3 of us, not you, and that'll give you a chance to talk with your colleagues. So if I do this correctly, but stick around, Angela, because we will be back, and I am going to pause recording. I'm the world's worst. Did I lose Dr. Hobbs? No, there we go. All right, I have recording. I turned the recording on, and Angela, I am happy to tell you the committee is ready for you to move forward. You and I will need to stick around at the end of this to talk about one or two little small things, but the committee was very pleased with your work, and I'll let them say that as well. But if you'll stick around, congratulations. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you, committee. Thank you for trusting me to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for being so well prepared, and I'm excited to see what your outcome of your research is. And you know, this is a passion subject for me too, and so I look forward to seeing your progress.
Thank you, Angela. And as before, you did a fantastic job, and like I knew you would, very well prepared. And just know that, you know, I know your work, and I know you're going to do well. You're almost there. You're
Praise
almost
God.
there. Don't give up.
Thank you, Dr. Hobbs, and thank you, Dr. Bass. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stick around with Angela, but again, thank you from the university. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Lakeisha, pick up details on how to do this next week, okay?
Absolutely, Dr. Stone. Yes, sir. I'll be ready for you.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Dr. Hobbs. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
And Hope and Lakeisha, if you will say goodbye, we'll see you later.
Congratulations, Angela. Good job. Good job.
Thank you,
I'll see you
Hope.
Monday, Lakeisha.
She's gone.
Bye.
Bye, Hope. All right, let me turn this on.